So with that, I will introduce tonight's speaker. Says Kate, it all began with a pile of labeled photos of non-relatives that were mixed in with my grandparents' old family photos. Were they friends, classmates, war buddies, neighbors? She was determined to find out, so she started poking around genealogy websites and immediately began connecting with relatives of the photographed. Now she's hooked. She loves to visit antique stores to thumb through their pictures and request to find those that are labeled so that she might return them to their family members. One woman affectionately dubbed her the photo angel. The purpose of this project is to celebrate success stories and inspire others to dig out their dusty attic boxes and visit antique stores for photos with identifying information and join in the fun. Katie is in her 22nd year of teaching as a highly qualified, professionally licensed pre-K-8 special education teacher and a certified Wilson reading instructor in a Massachusetts public school. She holds a Master of Science in Special Education from Simmons University and a Bachelor of Science in Special Education from Bridgewater State University. She has experience teaching in the inclusion, resource, and substantially separate classroom settings. She also delivers small group instruction for students with dyslexia and other language-based learning disabilities who have not yet mastered the sound-symbol relationship required for fluent reading. Please join me in welcoming Kate. I will stop sharing and now you can start.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and thanks to all of you for spending some time tonight learning about the Photo Angel Project. I'm going to begin by sharing my presentation. Okay, here we go. All right, can you guys see this okay?
Perfect.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. All right, so what is the Photo Angel Project? So in 2021, my mom and I were sitting at her kitchen table and we were going through some old family photos that belonged to her parents, my grandparents. And we were separating them into two piles, our relatives that we knew of, and then people we weren't related to. They were either friends or war buddies, like Paula had said, neighbors, just people who meant something to my grandparents. And, you know, time passed and now we're a couple of generations removed. And we were chatting about how it would be wonderful if we could somehow get these photos back to their family members so that they could love them and cherish them and pass them on for posterity. So I've always been into genealogy, which you'll learn about in some the subsequent slides. And so I was familiar with the genealogy websites and have been a longtime member of Ancestry. So I thought, all right, well, thankfully these pictures have some information on the back, names and locations. So I started plugging in the information that I had into the Ancestry database to see if perhaps somebody had shared a family tree on the individuals. And sure enough, I connected with this gentleman from Tennessee, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, Kate, I can't believe you have photos of my family members and some of my ancestors that I've never even seen before. This is awesome." So he graciously accepted the photos, and he was so cute. He said, "Oh, I have a cousin who's also into genealogy in California. Can you send some of them to her?" So I said, "Of course, of course." And so that felt really, really good to be able to get the photos back to where they belonged. And at the time, there was an antique store down the street from my school. And I thought, all right, well, maybe I'll pop in after school one day and see if there are any photos with identifiable information on them. And you'll hear me talk a lot about photos that have identifiable information on them, because a common question that I get is, but what if there's nothing on the photo? And so I will talk about that in my slides. So anyway, the recipe for success is to have a first name, last name, and a location. And so I started to repeat the process, and these success stories just started rolling in. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't keep all this joy to myself. Like, I got to get the word out and get other people involved. So I created a Facebook group and I started to share my success stories and encourage other people to share theirs. And the project took on a life of its own that I never anticipated. I was just having some fun with genealogy, and I'm speechless, really. It's incredible where it has taken me. So I would be remiss if I didn't share 3 key people who inspired me on this journey. So first we have my paternal grandmother. This is Hazel Chapman Norton. She was also a teacher, a public school teacher in Bristol, Connecticut. I grew up in Massachusetts, but all of my roots are in Bristol. My parents are from Connecticut, everything. So we would go and visit my grandparents and my extended family often. And so she was a member of the Connecticut Society of Genealogists and introduced me to genealogy as a child. Now, this is pre-internet, right? So she showed me how to fill out all the old family pedigree charts, put your last name, comma, first name, middle initial, and follow the lines back. And I thought this was really cool. But then when she took the boxes of family photos out of her closet, these names and dates came to life, if you will. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have a visual to go along with all of this information. And I was just hooked at an early age, and I wanted to learn as much as possible. So she instilled a sense of pride in both my English and Norwegian ancestors. Her grandparents came over from Oslo, Norway, and our family is really blessed to have the steamer trunk that they came over with. Very cool stuff. I learned through my grandmother's research that I am related to the author of Little Women, Louisa May Alcott, through my grandfather's side, and I was able to join the Daughters of the American Revolution, through this Alcott line. And also, I joined the General Society of Mayflower Descendants through my grandmother's ancestor, William Bradford. I made this discovery after she had passed, which is unfortunate because she loved history and she would have loved to have known that she was a descendant of a pilgrim. Person number 2. This is my maternal grandfather, Walter Strawn. He was a World War II veteran from Connecticut who served in the Pacific Theater, and he had a deep sense of family pride, especially in his Civil War ancestor, Private James Strawn, who died at Andersonville prison camp in Georgia. Now, my family took a trip down south to pay our respects to our Civil War ancestor buried in Andersonville. And even if you don't have any connection to Andersonville, what a place, what a sobering, beautiful, well-maintained piece of history. I definitely encourage you to visit if you can. They have a wonderful museum as well. So anyway, my grandfather, I talked a lot about James Strawn. And so what he did was he had framed generational photos displayed on his walls of both his side and my grandmother's side. So for example, he started at the top with his Civil War ancestor, James Strawn, and then underneath you would have his 4 sons, and then all the way down to my mom and my uncles. And these images just prompted so many conversations. And he had such a great sense of humor. He used to point to the picture of him when he was a little boy with his ringlet curls and make jokes about it and stuff. So just wonderful memories, and I thank him so much. And this last piece, of course, is so prophetic for the Photo Angel Project. He stressed the importance of labeling photos. So he and his sister, who you'll meet in the next slide, were awesome about making sure that our family photos were labeled for future generations to enjoy. Person number 3, this is my maternal great aunt, my Aunt Jen. She was also a teacher, as you can see, right? There's a theme here in my family, genealogy and teaching. So, I think it was my destiny. She was also passionate about genealogy, and she visited England and Germany in search of information on our ancestors. And she passed down meticulously labeled family photos and heirlooms to me. My Aunt Jen took it to a whole new level. Not only did she label the photos with my grandfather, she labeled the heirlooms and the items. And because the Strawn side was relatively small as far as descendants go, and I was the one that expressed the interest in the family history, I have a mini museum, if you will, of Strawn family heirlooms. And my Aunt Jen did such a fantastic job labeling everything. For example, there's this beautiful pin that belonged to her mother. And, if it was just passed down without anything, any notes attached, I would have assumed that it was from my grandfather's side of the family, but not sure who it belonged to or anything. But thanks to my Aunt Jen, she attached a note to the pin, and she said that it was her mother's favorite pin, and she would bring it to Hartford to have it, cleaned at Lux Bond and like right, everything you could possibly imagine. She wrote down. So thank you, Aunt Jen. Thank you, Grandpa Strawn. Thank you, Grandma Norton, for planting these seeds in me so long ago. All right. What was your first success story for the Photo Angel project? So this handsome gentleman's photo was one that was in the pile of photos that my mom and I were going through at her kitchen table. So his last name is spelled Strawn with a W. My Strauns are spelled Straun. It's English. And so come to find out, my great aunt Jan somehow connected with these Strauns of Tennessee. That's one question that I wish I had asked her. I don't know how she made that connection. Again, this is pre-internet, like 1940s, right? But anyway, she was trying to make a connection to our families, and the connection was never made, but a wonderful friendship ensued. So that's how we ended up acquiring all these photos of these Strauns from Tennessee. And in the pile, there were pictures of my great aunts going down to Tennessee and visiting these Strauns, and pictures of these Strauns visiting my great aunts up in Bristol, Connecticut. So anyway, it was just so much fun connecting with the recipient of these photos, because I learned a lot about these people and he learned a lot about my family. Okay, so I found a labeled photo and I would like to return it to a relative. Where do I begin? All right, so my words of wisdom would be to use the genealogy websites when you are looking for a potential candidate to receive your photo, and I'll explain why. So I typically use Ancestry, I've used MyHeritage, and I also use Find a Grave. You guys are a genealogy organization. I'm sure you're familiar with all of these, but just quickly, Ancestry is a paid subscription, but some libraries will offer you free access. Same with MyHeritage. Find a Grave is a free website where you can find information on the grave of an ancestor. For example, say I was looking for a grave of my ancestor in, Missouri or somewhere where I couldn't get to. Either a family member or a good Samaritan who, walks their dog in cemeteries and uploads pictures of the graves, will share it on Find a Grave. And I've had a lot of success with Find a Grave, not necessarily with finding recipients of the photos, although I have found some, but it's more helping me build the information behind the person in the photo that I'm researching. So I use Ancestry and Find a Grave on a daily basis, interchangeably. And then reach out to family members who have uploaded family trees on the person in the photo. And I would shy away from general search engines to locate relatives, as some people are not interested in family photos for various reasons. Okay, so what I mean by that is I wouldn't recommend going on Google, finding an obituary, finding the descendants of the person in the photo and reaching out to them, using Facebook or something, because I learned early in the project, some folks, just for whatever reason, and at first I was like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I'm like, what do you mean? I would be so excited if somebody contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, I have a photo of your ancestor. But people have their reasons, and I totally get it now. Sometimes there's bad memories attached to photos. So anyway, the reason I suggest using the genealogy websites is because that's your target audience. Those are the people that are more often than not going to be very excited if you reach out to them. And if you still don't have any luck, you could always donate a photo to a historical society or a museum as a last resort. In my experience, I have found that historical societies are hit or miss. Sometimes, I'll send a photo, and they'll be really excited and, add it to their collection. And sometimes, and I understand this too, they're overwhelmed with inventory and they can only take so much. So some photos have been sent back to me. So it's hit or miss. The first one that got sent back to me, I took so personally, but I got over it fast. And I wanted to share with you a story here about this particular album. So I was at an antique store in Lakeville, Massachusetts, not far from me, maybe about 40 minutes. And I had browsed around the store and I was looking for labeled photos, but there wasn't really anything catching my eye. So as I was leaving, the clerk at the desk said, "Oh, just being polite. Did you find everything you were looking for?" And then I started explaining the project, and she was like really into it. And she's like, "Oh, hold on. I think I have something that might interest you in the back room. Do you have a minute?" I said, "Of course." So she comes back with this heavy, gorgeous antique album, right? I thought, "Oh my goodness, like what do we have in here?" So I opened up to this page and I thought, aha, well, this certainly has some potential. Right off the bat, we have 2 original photos that are labeled. And through my research, I learned that these 2 gentlemen owned a home building company out in the Western United States, like the Oregon, Washington state area. And they were, how do I want to say this? They were called to help retrieve a lightship that was stranded on the Columbia River. So this business, this Allen and Roberts business, was contacted to help move this ship back to land. And anyway, so I started flipping through this album, and there were all these 5x7 photos visually documenting the entire process. Now, this is in like the late 1800s. So we're talking horses and wagons and just unbelievable pictures. And I'm like, I'm not leaving this antique store without this. This is awesome, right? What a piece of history. And I thanked her profusely. So I went home and, my natural instinct was to try and locate a family member of one of the gentlemen. No luck. So the responses that I got were, "Oh yeah, I'm related, but it's so distantly. I don't feel right taking the album. Can you try to find a closer relative?" That kind of thing. So I'm like, all right. So some time passed. And I thought, what am I going to do with this album? It's awesome. And it's got to go back to a place that will enjoy it. And so I thought, all right, well, I need to think outside the box. Maybe I'll see if there are some maritime museums in the Pacific Northwest that would be interested in this piece. And lo and behold, this woman responded to my email and she said, "Oh my gosh, Kate, you have what? And what was it doing in storage in an antique store in Massachusetts?" I'm like, "I don't know, but would you be interested in it?" And she said, "Oh my goodness, absolutely. We have a whole exhibit dedicated to shipwrecks on the Columbia River." I'm like, perfect. So the point of the story is, even if you can't get it back to a relative, please get it back to somebody who is going to enjoy it. All right, so can you show us an example of a labeled photo? And I always preface this slide with this. This is the cream of the crop. Please, please, please don't be discouraged if you go to your local antique store and you're thumbing through photo after photo with no information on it, okay? But trust me, photos like this are out there. So I'm going to call attention to certain features here. So this is called a cabinet card. I didn't know what a cabinet card was until I started doing the Photo Angel project, and they were very popular in the late 1800s. It started to kind of fade away in the early 1900s. And they're great because they were taken at a portrait studio. So right away you have a location, or at least a place where the family may have lived. So here we have the portrait studio, Leonard, which really doesn't help much in the search, but the location does. So Topeka, Kansas. Okay, so I have a starting point, right? So then on the reverse of the photo, this is very special. This isn't typical. Somebody took the time to type out the name of the cute little baby on the photo. Hugh GW counts, 11 months and 6 days. And then we have a stamp here. that it was taken in 1889. So all sorts of good stuff. I love how somebody took the time to type it out, because oftentimes the handwriting is illegible. So that's a whole other conversation. It can be really tricky to decipher some of the old penmanship. And I came from the generation where I learned how to read and write penmanship, but it's still tough. So yeah, this is a really special one. And I picked this photo up in the early stages of the project at an antique store on the east side of Providence, and reunited it with his granddaughter in Washington State. And it's, when I first started, I couldn't believe that photos, for example, from Topeka, Kansas, were in a Providence, Rhode Island antique store, but they're just, they're all, they come from all over, which is really fun. Another question I get is, do you reunite other pieces of ephemera with relatives or just photos? So for the Photo Angel project, I primarily focus on the photos, but really anything with identifiable information on it is fair game. The photos just tend to be a little more on the budget friendly side. Not all photos, but your average cabinet card may run you about $5, but a labeled class ring is going to be a lot more than that. So anyway, I've returned baptism certificates, yearbooks. Yearbooks are a really fun way to get your feet wet with the Photo Angel project, because think about it, you have all those photos to start with, and chances are you're going to find a relative of one of the graduates in the yearbook. Funeral memorial cards like this beautiful one. I had no idea until I started the project that these funeral cards were so gorgeous and ornate. High school diplomas I've returned, letters, postcards. Antique stores are full of postcards. Historical albums like the one that I just shared with you, Christmas cards, tons of Christmas cards in antique stores, and passports. Passports are fun, especially the really old ones, because they give you everything you could possibly want in a passport. How do I organize my photos? So I have my Photo Angel office, right? And I have 4 categories to organize the photos. I have my new photos. And so these photos are ones that I've either purchased myself at antique stores or people have donated to the Photo Angel project. I cannot tell you how generous people have been donating photos to the Photo Angel project. It's so fun to come home from school and see what's waiting for me in the mailbox. Oh my goodness, it's very exciting. Then I have my pending photos. So those are the photos where I've reached out to potential recipients, but I haven't heard back yet. Or if I've heard back, they say, oh, the relative is too distantly related. I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable taking it, that kind of thing. So those are like my in limbo photos. And those kind of hang out in my files for a couple of weeks, and then they move to my challenges files. And those are photos that I haven't yet made a connection with a family member yet, but I still hang on to them because I've had people reach out to me years after my initial inquiry about the photo, and they're like, hey, I haven't logged into Ancestry in like 2 years. Do you still have the photo of so and so? And sometimes I do, which is really exciting, and sometimes I don't, and it's already gone back to somebody at that point. But everybody will get a digital copy of any subsequent photo that's already been returned. And then, of course, my favorite is the to be mailed photos. Those are awesome. I'm quite friendly with the folks down at the post office. Photos are going all over the country, internationally, all the time. And again, I'm so thankful for the support that I've been given. People will donate stamps and mailing supplies and all sorts of goodies that really help out with the project. Here's a question I tend to get. What is your greatest challenge? My greatest challenge is when I reach out to a potential relative and they do not respond to me because, unfortunately, they mistakenly think that I'm some sort of scammer. And that is so frustrating. And I totally understand there are some terrible people out there. People have been scammed and they're hesitant and they're reluctant. I get it, no judgment. But on my side, it's like I could be holding a photo of their great grandfather and they're just too nervous to respond. But I have had some instances where, I don't hear anything. And then maybe a couple of days or a week later, I'll hear back from the person and they'll say, I Googled you and you sound pretty legit. You still have the photo. So sometimes it works out in their favor, but not always with the original copy. But again, the digital copy will be provided. Okay, this is my favorite photo return story to date. Nothing has topped this one yet. I love telling this story. All right, so let's see, where do I want to start? So this gentleman, his name is Stuart Breitzman, and he lives in Freeport, Maine. And so what happened was I was giving a presentation just like I am now, but in person for a historical society in Rhode Island. And at the end of the presentation, this woman comes up to me with this beautiful antique, well-preserved antique photo album. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Maybe she wants to show me her family photos. I love old photos. I look at them all day long, right? So she proceeds to explain that she purchased this album about 50 years ago at an antique store. And, she tried over the years to reunite it with family and didn't have any success. And she had heard about the Photo Angel Project and she wanted to attend and donate the album to the project. And I didn't know what to say. I was just speechless because I've been to the antique stores. I know how much these go for. And I said, please let me give you something for this. And she insisted that I take it as a donation. I said, okay, I vow to do my best with this one, right? So I went right home and I started researching on ancestry. And Stuart was a gentleman that I connected with. And he said to me, oh my gosh, Kate, he said, I'm related to virtually everybody in that photo album. He's like, I can't believe this. Fortunately, everything was labeled. It was awesome. There were, I don't know, maybe over 50 photos, or maybe more in this album. I said, perfect. I said, it's yours. I said, what's your address? He said, nope. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm coming to you. I said, all right. I said, well, you're in Maine. I'm in Massachusetts. Let's meet halfway. He said, nope. He said, I'm retired. I'm coming to you. Okay. So he came down to my home one weekend and he brought his laptop and we had a wonderful afternoon just going through each page of the album, verifying his relationship to the people in the photographs. And it was just so awesome. So, for example, this picture right here is of Stuart's dad as a little boy. He had never seen that photo before, standing with his dad or Stuart's grandfather, and everybody else was either a collateral relative or a direct ancestor. And so, if that's not good enough, it keeps getting better, right? So then we have a photo that was in the album of his Civil War ancestor that he had never seen a photo of before, especially in uniform. He was in the Rhode Island Cavalry. And this particular ancestor has published a book, actually you can buy it on Amazon, of his experiences surviving multiple Civil War prison camps. It's just unbelievable. One of them being Andersonville. So Stuart and I had that connection as well. And so we were just became fast friends. And then the icing on the cake of this whole story is that Stuart is a retired photographer. So there's so many layers of awesomeness to this story. It'll be very difficult to top this one. But I love to give this as an example because I want you guys to have the same experiences. Story number 2. So this antique book of poems by Charlotte Bronte came to me from a donor who wanted to remain anonymous. And so she said that tucked inside one of the pages of this book of poems was an obituary and a photo accompanying the obituary. But here was the issue. The photo wasn't labeled. And we all know in genealogy that we don't make assumptions, right? We work off of proof. So I thought, okay, it could be the person in this obituary, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay. So I started by researching Captain Darwin E. Smith, and reached out to some potential family members. And this woman responded and she said, "Oh, yes, I'm related to Captain Darwin Smith." And I said, "All right, awesome." I said, "I have this photo that goes with it. If I email it to you, do you think that you'd be able to tell me if that was, in fact, a photo of him?" And she said, I'll give it my best shot. So I sent off the email with the obituary and the photo. And she said, "Oh," she said, "it could be, but I'm not 100% sure, but I know somebody who will know with 100% certainty." She said, "My great aunt." I said, "Okay." So about a week later, she was able to connect with her great aunt, and her great aunt said, without a doubt, it was it was Captain Darwin E. Smith's son, affectionately known as Uncle Bobo. And I just love this picture. I think it's so stinking cute. And so it went back to his niece in Atlanta, Georgia. That was a really fun one. What is the most rewarding part of the Photo Angel project? So the best part is hand delivering the photos to the excited members, right? Like I did with Stuart Bratesman from Maine. Like there's nothing better than that. It's just, it's so fun. But I'm not always afforded that opportunity because, like I said before, these photos are going all over the place, internationally and nationally. So when I have an opportunity, I definitely jump on it. So this one right here, I found this photo of this gentleman's dad at an antique store in Rhode Island, and it was his father's 1926 high school graduation photo. And so he lived in Worcester, not too far from me. So we met up at Polo Park in Worcester, and he was so cute. He brought the photo album of his Italian immigrant ancestors, and I felt like I was part of the family by the end of the conversation, as he was telling me all about his ancestors and how they came over and they started a dairy farm, and then the dairy farm turned into a very prominent business in the area. And actually they still had an ice cream stand, so we had a nice ice cream cone after the meeting. So that was a delightful afternoon. And then this one right here, oh, that's right, this is a Virginia connection for you guys. Hold on. My family took a trip down south a couple of years ago, and we were driving through Virginia, hitting up some antique stores. You guys have great antique stores, by the way. And so I came across this 1949 Christmas card, photo Christmas card. And it had all sorts of information on the back, like a personal note from a relative, et cetera, et cetera. And so I reached out using the genealogy websites, connected with a family member. And I said, "All right, these are the people that are in the picture. Are you related?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely related." I said, "Okay, can you tell me what the connection is? What is the relationship?" And he said, "Well, sure." He said, "You see this little boy right here? That's me." And those are my parents. I said, "Oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me." I said, "Do you remember like going to the portrait studio and getting this picture taken?" He said, "No, Kate." He said, "But I can't tell you what it meant to me to get a photo of my parents. It brought back such wonderful memories." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like that's the essence of the Photo Angel project right there." Oh, I made this slide just for you guys, and I will read it verbatim because I don't want to miss anything. All right, so meet Civil War Colonel Charles Christian Baker, born in Charlottesville, Virginia, to parents William and Louisiana Timberlake Baker. There was a piece in the Greensboro Daily News that says Colonel Charles Baker, dead, Richmond, Virginia, April 10th. Colonel Charles C. Baker, Confederate veteran who witnessed the execution of John Brown at Harper's Ferry during the Civil War and who was with General Pickett in his famous charge at Gettysburg, is dead in Charlottesville, Virginia. He was the son of William Baker, who was named by Thomas Jefferson as the first librarian of the University of Virginia in 1925. And so it says, thank you to Lori Kurtz, who donated an antique photo album to the Photo Angel Project that she found at a Goodwill in Florida. Charles's portrait was among the over 100-year-old pages. Through my research, I learned that the late Reverend Billy Graham's son, Reverend Franklin Graham, is Charles Wertenbaker's descendant through his mother's line, and the image was returned to Franklin Graham. And Franklin Graham sent me a beautiful thank you note that I will cherish always. So there's your Virginia one, special just for you guys. All right, what is the Photo Angel Wings program? All right, so this is fun. This is something fun that I do to encourage people to participate in the Photo Angel project. So if you return a photo to somebody that you're not related to and share your success story in the Photo Angel Facebook group, then I will mail you a pair of white wings. If you do the same for 5 different photos to 5 different relatives, then you get your silver wings, and gold for 10 or more. It's just fun. I've also added pink wings for people who have returned an item, and find a grave wings, I call them, for people who will upload the image that either I or somebody else has shared in the Photo Angel Facebook group, and then add it to Find a Grave, so that there's a picture of the person to accompany the grave memorial. So it's just a fun way to get people interested and to reward them for their efforts. Do you return photos to families free of charge? Yes, I do. This is my joy, my labor of love, and it's just so fun to help people piece together their family histories. But I've said this before, the people have been incredibly generous with their donations. They'll send me stamps and mailing supplies, labeled photos, monetary contributions, you name it. It's unbelievable what comes to my mailbox, and it's been really fun. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the site deadfred.com, but Dead Fred himself has been sharing boxes and boxes and boxes of labeled photos with me to reunite with families, and I just need to give him a shout out because he's been extremely supportive of the project. Where have I sent photos? So the teacher in me purchased a map, and every time I returned a photo to a state, I put a pin in it. And for the longest time, I could not return a photo to South Dakota, and I finally got one not too long ago. I was so excited to complete my pin map. So I can now officially say that I've returned photos to all 50 states, as well as the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and Norway. Where can I find more information on the Photo Angel project? So I have a website, thephotoangel.net. I have the Photo Angel Facebook group, which is a really fun, active, positive community. Also Instagram and the Photo Angel, YouTube channel. I try to put out content daily on the YouTube channel. There's a clip from NBC's The Today Show on the Photo Angel project. I'll tell you a little more about that in the next slide. The project was featured in Family Tree magazine, in the Boston Globe, in American Spirit, which is DAR's magazine, Mayflower Quarterly, Mayflower Society's magazine, Guidepost magazine, GBH News Boston with Jim Browdy, Boston's news program Chronicle, and then Oxfordshire Live. That's my international one. That was really cool. Somebody sent me, it was an anonymous donor, sent me 2 mortgage transfer papers from Oxfordshire, England, from I want to say it was like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and I was able to connect them with a descendant in Canada. Just unbelievable stuff. So this list is not exhaustive, but it's some of my favorites that have highlighted the project. All right, last story. So I was at school and I was checking my email, and an unusual message popped up, and it said NBC external. I said, uh-oh, what is this? This looks like something, right? So I opened it up, And I started reading, and I must have looked like I had seen a ghost because my teacher assistant was like, Kate, are you all right? Like, what's going on? I'm like, come here, read this. And the two of us are like, all excited, right? It was the producers of the Today Show, and they wanted to do a segment on the Photo Angel Project, which I never in a million years would have thought would have happened. It was really, really exciting. And so the producers actually learned about the project through the article in the Boston Globe. So that was really fun. So before I knew it, it was February vacation, and they were, tearing apart my living room, moving everything around to put the lights up and this and that. And I'm like, this is like some kind of strange, crazy dream. Like this is actually happening. So they were so wonderful, so professional, and really very, very interested in the project. And so they interviewed me in my living room, and then they followed my husband and me to one of our favorite antique stores not too far from Rhode Island to get some footage in the field, right? And it was just an incredible experience. And then after the segment aired, this is unbelievable. The Photo Angel Facebook grew in one day by 5,000 members. So it's like, that's what national exposure will do. And again, what a blessing. I just want to get the message out, get the photos out of the attics, out of the out of the antique stores, and back where they belong. So I'll leave you with this segment.
Actually, we're not hearing the video, so maybe we should probably just put a link to it in the chat box.
Oh, okay. That's weird. It was coming up clear for me. Okay.
Yeah,
Works.
but there's I didn't know you were sharing a video. There's a button you click when you're sharing your screen that allows for sharing sound.
Oh, okay.
And we
Yeah.
didn't do that, so sorry about that. That was
That's
my bad.
okay. That's all right. So
But let's share it to the
yes.
chat box, and people can watch it.
Yes, perfect. So, all right. So, do you guys have any questions? Let's see. Let me see if I can exit out of this. Wait a minute. Okay, there I am. All right, stop share. Okay, I think I'm good. Yeah. So, do you guys
I think we all have like that maybe small pile or that photo or something we've come across, and we've been meaning to get to it. So hopefully this will encourage people to move that up the to do pile a little bit. Angela asks, how do we find you on Facebook?
Oh, the Photo Angel. You will find me. We now have 33,000 members and counting. So it's a lot of fun.
Cool. And Cheryl says, I have a beautiful memorial card from when my father passed in December 1961.
Awesome.
Jessica says, this is so awesome. Have so many questions. Well, ask them.
Yeah, please feel free. Don't be shy.
I don't know if you can turn your mic on, Cheryl. I see your camera's not working, but your mic might be. There you go.
I'm here.
There.
I love this. I'm very into the genealogy. My father's side comes from England. We have earls and dukes in his family, and I've been struggling finding history on him. He passed in 1961 when I was 5. He was a Army veteran. He served in the Korean War and was a POW and an MIA. And the mortuary did up this beautiful. I could take a picture and send to you.
Sure, I'd love to see.
Beautiful. He was stationed in the Army here in Fort Riley, Kansas. And I recently moved from Wichita, Kansas to Clay Center, Kansas, which is just about 20 minutes from Fort Riley. And every time I go into Junction City at the gates of Fort Riley, they have 2 tankers sitting there with a flag. And I salute my father and say, hello, Father, I'm here. I hear you. I see you. I feel you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I have mourned him ever since I was 5.
Oh,
And it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
He's he sits on a pedestal for me. And
Yes.
I'll send you some pictures and yeah, and I'm very interested in getting involved
Mhm.
because not only am I interested in finding out more than I can find out, uh, I know several people that are interested in genealogy.
Wonderful. Yes, thank
Thank you
you.
for your service.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments?
Sharon asks, when you contact somebody, what do you say?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes. So I give them as much information as I can. So, for example, I will say something, say it's a cabinet card. I will say, I purchased or I acquired, right? Because sometimes people are sending them to me. A cabinet card of, and then the name of the person, taken that whatever portrait studio in whatever town and state. I'm looking to return it to family. Are you a blood relative of this person? And if so, what is the relationship? And my general rule of thumb is to give the photo back to the person with the closest relationship who is interested in the genealogy. And sometimes, like say a cousin will reach out and say, oh, I'd love to have that photo. And if I haven't heard from anybody in a long time, it goes to the cousin. But there have been a couple of instances where, time has passed, the cousin reaches out, and I'm like, all right, well, that's great. I mean, at least it's going back to a family member, right? And then like a couple of days later, the descendant responds, and I'm like, oh no, what do I do now? So in those cases, I've kind of put it on them. I say, oh, the descendant has reached out to me. Would you like for me to send them the original or the digital? How would you like me to proceed? And 100% of the time, the person who's not as closely related will say to me, I'll settle for the digital. Please give them the hard copy.
Good.
Yeah.
David asks, how do you handle the volume?
I know. And really, I started off like, scraping for photos right at the antique stores. And now I think I could open up my own museum of antique photos. I have so many. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That is a great question. Right now, I have the photos, in my photo angel office. I have them in my closet. I have them in my desk. I have them in my, drawers. Right. So,
They take on a life of their own sometimes, that's for sure.
yeah. And because I have such a large volume now, which is a blessing, like no complaints, right? I become quite selective of the photos that I'm working with. For example, if it's one where I'm having trouble deciphering the name, I might put that in a separate pile. Like, nope, not going to be dealing with that one today. I'm going to be like working on all the easy ones, if you will, the legible ones. Yeah.
Okay, lots of thank you for your talent. Thanks for doing this. Anne asks, do you ever use facial recognition when there's no documentation? If so, which one?
No, I don't. I use just the information on the photo. Again, first name, last name, location. Sometimes you can get away with no location if the surname is atypical, but like Mary Smith with no location is like looking for a needle in a haystack, right?
Yep.
Right.
I know that one well with the William.
Yeah. No, I don't use facial recognition. It's all old school right now.
Susan says, I have old family photos that I have no idea who the people are. What are the first few steps I take to get started finding out who they are in the family?
Yeah, I know. I mean, my grandfather and my great aunt did a great job labeling as many as they could, but I still have some where you can see the family features, but they're not labeled. In that case, what I would recommend is talk to as many relatives as possible, even relatives that you haven't met online, because you never know who has photos. Like you might have an unlabeled photo, but a cousin that you've never met that you reached out to through Ancestry might have a similar or the exact photo that is labeled, and then you can match the two. I mean, that's the best advice I can offer for that particular situation. You know, a lot of times people will say, well, I got this photo at an antique store and there's nothing on it. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, that one's lost to history.
Yeah.
At this point in time. I mean, maybe photo recognition will become super precise and we'll be able to identify everybody, but right now, no.
Yeah, I'm the family collector of photos. I mean, you can kind of see from my background, a bunch of them I threw on the bed to just take a picture as an example. I've done a much better job of actually scanning them, and I've uploaded them to Flickr. And every time I talk to a family member, however distant a cousin, I send them to the Flickr page, and a lot of times they'll comment, because I have this one album that says, I'm not sure, I need help. And I've had people like either correct misidentifications or say, oh, I know who that is. That's great Uncle so-and-so.
Right.
So that's a thought. I mean, I don't know that you know, maybe if you have a family Facebook group or something where you can save that kind of stuff, because a lot of times like the group the group can come to a conclusion and can help, because you know,
That's right.
like you said, a lot of times somebody will have like another photo from the same day and it will be labeled, or you'll see somebody in the photo and go, oh, I didn't know they knew who that was, I'm going to ask them. And
right. Great questions.
Christy says, my great grandmother was a photographer, and we uncovered, or grandfather, I guess, was a photographer. We uncovered his family photos, which I was able to share when I met relatives through Ancestry, as they did for us. I got to hear the stories that had come down on that line that we had never heard. I traveled to Wisconsin to meet them, to research the family there. It was amazing. My mother finally saw her grandmother for the first time. They look so much alike. So photos can be everything.
That's awesome. What a cool story. Thank you for sharing.
Jean says, I have a photo that I call the man in uniform. It was in a box of photos that I had inherited from my paternal side. Yeah, sometimes we just have, that's the best we could do.
Yeah, I know. So my public service announcement is label your photos.
It's sad when you come upon albums of photos from your grandmother and you have no clue who they are.
I know. It's tough. I get it.
They went by the wayside because we had no clue. I think they were friends.
Yeah, that's true. It could be.
I recognized any of them.
Yeah, near my feet is a scrapbook for my aunt that is nothing but friends, and so I'm going to go through her high school yearbook. But I mean, she moved from state to state, so there's lots of places it could be.
Right. I know.
How do you feel when you go in a Cracker Barrel?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
I sit there and look at them and think, oh, those are
it's so funny. There's a restaurant in Rhode Island, and it's decorated like old fashioned, right? So they have it's similar to Cracker Barrel, where they have all the photos. And I'm not gonna lie, oh my gosh, when I was at the booth and I'm like looking at the photos of the wall, I did a quick peek around to see if nobody was looking, and I turned over to see if it was labeled. It wasn't.
They probably got them at the antique stores.
Right.
Yep. All right, Jean, back about the man in uniform. She says, actually, he's wearing a uniform with captain things on his shoulder and a badge that indicated a sheriff. A great uncle fits this description, but cannot prove it was him. So that's a lot of clues right there, and it's those clues that can help identify people.
For sure. I mean, even when people post pictures on Ancestry or on Find a Grave and I'm researching, sometimes I find that helpful too. It's like, oh yeah, sometimes it's the exact same image. Actually, tonight in the Photo Angel Facebook group, I was doing some research on a particular person, and somebody posted the exact same picture of the person I was researching attached to the name. So I'm like, well, there you go. Like that's clearly a match.
Yes. Yeah. Rebecca asks, do you keep a digital copy of every image you return? If so, how do you identify it?
I do. I have, well, they're all saved on Facebook. So if I need to grab it real quick, I'll just type in the name. It comes up on Facebook, and then I send it off in an email.
Yeah. Angeline says, Kate, I purchased a photo album that includes an Army Air Force Fighter Command Group Observer Corps certificate. I tried researching relatives on Ancestry, but of all the relatives were too distantly related. Is it a good idea to upload them to multiple genealogy sites to try and find relatives?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly can't hurt.
Yeah, I've actually been a recipient of somebody reaching out. There was it was a studio photo. The guy's name was written on the back. It was a third cousin, but the person said, "I'm sending it to you anyway
Yeah.
because you're closer and you've
Right.
responded, and maybe you can have better luck tracking down closer families."
That's right. That's right. Awesome.
So sometimes, a family genealogist who's a second or third cousin might come across and go, "Oh, I know them. I can get in touch." So
That's
I think
right.
that was the hope with the person who reached out to me.
Right. Wow, these
All
are
right.
great.
Well, that is it for the Oh, Angela says, I've scanned family photos and captioned them and put them on Pinterest. That's similar to what I've done to Flickr. So yeah, uploading photos.
Yep.
I don't know that I would have thought of Pinterest, so I need to go
Yeah, me
explore that
neither.
site some more.
I know. I learned something new with every presentation with these comments and questions that people bring up. That's very cool.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for the chat box. I guess we'll thank you very much for your time and your stories and everyone else's stories.
Yes,
the recording
thank
for this
you.
will be up sometime this evening or tomorrow morning at the latest. And
That's
just look for it. And thanks everybody. And thank you, Kate.
wonderful. Thank you. Please check out the video. I'm sorry that it didn't work on the Today Show, the Photo Angel. I think you will enjoy it.
And we'll put a link to that with the YouTube video of this recording as well. So
Perfect.
we'll put it in the
Thank you.
description.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. You're a wonderful audience. Bye-bye.